More breaking news, and Khamzat's causing more chaos. Khamzat Chimaev missed weight by essentially 7.5 pounds, and now the fight seems to be in jeopardy. They don't know if they're going to be able to put it on. I don't know if Nate is going to want to accept it, and the reason they gave was a medical issue. If it was really a medical issue, then there's probably no way this fight would go on. If a medical issue is not allowing you to cut weight, there's no way the commission is going to let you fight. But here is the wrench into all of it. Apparently, there have been witnesses that saw Khamzat Chimaev in a restaurant last night eating and drinking sparkling water. This is confirmed by Mini Habib on Twitter, as well as other people that saw him as well. At that time, Khamzat should not be eating anything. He should be only looking to dehydrate and cut the weight. If he actually spent time at a restaurant eating, like people were saying that they saw him, the guy just didn't care. And then he goes on Twitter afterward and plays a whole joke around this. He posted like a funny picture of him and Darren Till and said that Till was the reason for this. What this all tells me is that Khamzat probably did this on purpose. He might just not care. Because even when he was weighing in, he was smirking, he was smiling, looked like he was joking around, he flicked off the camera, he's posting memes on Twitter right after. I mean, wasn't he the same guy that cut weight to 170 on 10 days notice? This should have been a walk in the park, and he didn't even look drawn in at all. He didn't look bad on the scales. And I don't know the reason as to why. Maybe he wants to fight Kevin Holland. Maybe he's actually trying to get out of this fight with Nate Diaz and get into a fight with Holland because they went at each other backstage. As we know, Kevin Holland is fighting at 180 pounds on Saturday. Khamzat weighed nearly that weight. That seems to be probably the only reason he did this, and really nothing else makes sense. Maybe he doesn't want to cut the weight, he doesn't want to give Diaz that kind of respect. Whatever is going on, Khamzat Chimaev showed to be extremely unprofessional in this one. Missing weight by a pound or two is big. Missing weight by 7? You rarely ever see that. And if in fact this wasn't a medical reason, and it was just Khamzat playing around and just doesn't care, that is not going to sit well with the UFC. There's a potential they'll never have him headline a pay-per-view ever again unless he becomes a champion one day, because there is a responsibility on Khamzat to carry this card. And if the commission is not going to allow this to happen, if the fight is ultimately scrapped, what do you do then? Dustin Poirier posted a picture of him weighing 176 pounds right now. But the issue with that is the weigh-ins already happened. Unless they can have him come in for the ceremonial weigh-ins and then see if he can cut down to 170 and then they put him up against Nate Diaz, that would actually be ideal. Another option would be Tony Ferguson, who weighed in at 170. If they want to pull Tony out of this fight with Li Jingliang, which is a bit unfair, the main event of the pay-per-view is more important. Without the main event, the whole card falls apart. They could pay Li Jingliang to sit this one out and plug Tony Ferguson into that main event, which should have been the fight all along. This should have been Nate Diaz versus Tony Ferguson. Nate was actually calling him out. It was the first name that he mentioned in the interview that he wanted to fight. He wanted to fight Tony Ferguson more than anybody else. And Tony said that he was up to fight Nate, but something got in the way of the negotiations. In my opinion, I'll love to see that happen more than anything else. I don't want to see Tony get destroyed by Li Jingliang. Nate versus Tony is a much more competitive fight, and it's a fight that the hardcore and casual fans will be all excited about. Everybody knows Tony, everybody knows Nate, and with the way that they fight, it would 100% deliver. And you won't run into Khamzat Chimaev absolutely destroying Nate Diaz for 5 rounds. Competitive fights are really what's going to garner more attention. And Tony versus Nate is exactly that. So at the end of the day, Khamzat holds an L for the week. He kept bringing up this whole gangster stuff and then didn't cut the weight, tried to fight everybody in the back. At the end of the day, made himself look pretty foolish. Because he's not only disrespecting the other fighters, he's not only disrespecting his opponent, he's disrespecting the brass and the fans. And hopefully the UFC is going to be able to get an opponent out there, because they always do. They always pull an opponent that actually makes sense and even draws more attention. So I hope they either go the Tony route or the Dustin route.